what is your relationship with the North Carolina Wilmington documentary?
Good. I am a retired dentist. I'm very retired. I was born in Lamont, Pennsylvania, but grew up in Savannah, Georgia, the cultural center of the South. My early life was basically involved around what was happening in World War II, because I was born during the Depression, so I was a young kid during World War II, and in Savannah, everything military had happened there. The 8th Air Force was trained there. We had the Marine Corps about 40 miles away at Paris Island. We had Navy, we had everything about the military in Savannah. So that was my early desire to be something in the military, particularly in the Air Force. My brother and I had a brother. My mother and father were divorced, so I didn't know a lot about the patriarch side of my family until later in life, until being an adult. I had my early schooling in Savannah. I went 2 years to Savannah State, joined the Air Force. Unfortunately, my brother was killed in the Air Force in a plane crash, and I got out, and having a GI Bill, I finished my academic career at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And I had intentions of going back in the Air Force, but my mother wouldn't have anything to do with it, so eventually I went to dental school. And I always had an interest in history, but I never had a course in history. And at Howard, they had when I went to Howard in '54, John Hope Franklin was just leaving. Elaine Locke, who happens to be the first black Rhodes Scholar, just died. We had Rayford Logan, A.P. Davis. All these people were giants in their field, but they all ended up at Howard because they couldn't teach at the big white schools. None of the big white schools would have them, so Howard was a very academically challenging place. So it's where I first came in contact with Frederick Douglass, and my interest in history was there, but I sat in one or two classes because even E. Franklin Frazier was at Howard at the time. So I had an interest, so I believe you should always do some reading for pleasure other than just academic reading. Find something else, but the key to basically success in the world we live in is reading, and reading is the basis of knowledge. You gotta read well and read a lot. Just read, and work hard. So to get to what happened in Wilmington, this is something that was never mentioned to me growing up. My father, when he was right, he mentioned it maybe once, that there had been a problem in Wilmington, and he didn't say what it was. Into my dental career, I finally made contact with my relatives up in Wilmington. I had two great aunts who were still living in Wilmington, and I would go up there to visit them, and I would try to get them to tell me about their youth and what it was like growing up in the South at that time. And they would discuss the family, and they would discuss everything except the coup d'etat, the so-called riot. Well, I finally read a book, We Have Taken the City, by a professor from Tennessee State, that finally told really what happened up there in Wilmington. And finally saw the role that my grandfather played. So what had happened is that a group of whites, the Secret Nine, had planned to get rid of the duly elected Republican government up there. And the blacks had no idea what was happening. I don't want to get too much into you need to see the documentary because it covers it a little bit of what I could tell you in a short period of time. But anyhow, these aunts were involved, very much involved in what happened, and I had no idea until the state decided 100 years later to really delve into what happened, and they did this big report, which I have, and they interviewed these aunts, and these ladies were very much afraid of white people, and they had good reason to be. Well, in that report, it pointed out that they were actually in school when all this happened. The coup d'etat happened in broad daylight. It wasn't something done in the dark with people with hoods on their head running around. There's people that said, hey, we're not gonna have blacks controlling us and we'll kill you. And they did. And these old ladies in their 90s never stopped dealing with what they saw, trying to get home, with people being shot down in the street all around them. And somehow they got home and survived until the 20th century, far into the 20th century.